Today, J.Lo canceled her North American tour. There have been reports of slow ticket sales.
If her last album had done well, she would still be with her record label. And as of now, there is no other record label coming to snap her up.
You ever notice how the biggest stars sometimes crash the hardest? 1 minute, they're on top of the world, untouchable, adored, faces splashed across every billboard and magazine cover, and then out of nowhere, it's like the whole world flips on them. People start digging, questioning everything, talent, past, even their true character, and right now, that's exactly the storm swallowing Jennifer Lopez. This wasn't how her story was supposed to play out. J.Lo spent decades stacking her empire brick by brick. She wasn't just Jenny from the block, she was a whole brand. Hollywood actress, chart-topping pop star, fashion queen, business mogul, she did it all. She made it through scandals, messy headlines, reinventions, and comebacks that would have ended anyone else's career. No matter what got thrown her way, she bounced back stronger. But here we are in 2025, and suddenly her name is trending everywhere for all the wrong reasons. Look around, that brand new album she hyped up, torn apart by critics like it's the worst drop of her career, the highly promoted world tour, empty seats and canceled dates making headlines, the glossy movie she bet on, a flop nobody's talking about, and the documentary she put her own money into, dragged as nothing more than a vanity project. Every single piece of her so-called comeback has been shredded apart in public view. What was supposed to be her victory lap, the moment to prove she was still the Latin queen of pop, has spiraled into something darker. Instead of reclaiming her throne, J.Lo has become a cautionary tale, a live example of how even an icon can crumble when the spotlight turns cold and the image she built becomes too heavy to carry. And this isn't just about weak sales or some salty critics writing bad reviews, it runs way deeper than that. Every flop drags up the ghost of her past, forcing old whispers back into the spotlight. The accusations that haunted her for years suddenly sound louder, claims of plagiarism, the diva reputation, the rumors about how her career really took off. All those skeletons she thought were buried, they're dancing in public now, and people aren't letting her forget when J.Lo rolled out her album, This Is Me. Now, she tried to sell it like the ultimate comeback. She framed it as the next chapter to her legendary 2002 classic, This Is Me. Then, on paper, it was genius. Play into nostalgia, tie it to her rekindled love story with Ben Affleck, and remind everyone of that golden era when she couldn't miss. The marketing screamed romance, legacy, and timeless icon vibes, but the reality, brutal. The lead single barely touched the Billboard Top 40, no number one, no viral anthem, not even a meme-worthy moment, just silence, where the world used to cheer. And if that wasn't painful enough, what came next was a disaster. The big North American tour she announced, it started falling apart before it even hit the road. Fans dragged the ticket prices online, saying it was outrageous in this economy. But the final insult, the so-called VIP meet and greet package, almost $8,000 just to stand next to J.Lo for a few seconds and maybe a smile. People felt robbed, like she wasn't selling music anymore, just selling access to herself at a luxury price tag. The backlash was instant and loud. Think about it. $8,000 just to stand next to someone who built her whole brand on being relatable. The same J.Lo who called herself Jenny from the Bronx suddenly charging more than people's rent for a handshake and a selfie? Fans weren't having it. The backlash was instant. Empty seats, weak ticket sales, and shows quietly canceled before they even kicked off. And that's when things got real telling. To stop the bleeding, J.Lo had to completely flip the script on her own tour. She ditched the whole new album passion project angle and rebranded it into a greatest hits show. A last-ditch attempt to milk nostalgia because the new material simply wasn't hitting. But even leaning on the classics couldn't save her, because by then it wasn't just her music that was crumbling, it was the whole empire. She didn't just drop an album. She went all in with 2 major audio-visual projects to boost the rollout, and both turned into disasters. First, the documentary, hyped up as the greatest love story ever told, ended up feeling like a shrine to herself. Critics roasted it, calling it egotistical, delusional, and completely out of touch. And then came the movie, based on her rekindled love story with Ben Affleck, supposed to be this sweeping romantic statement, but instead it flopped hard. Reviews dragged it as boring, forced, and without a real plot. Some critics even crowned it one of the worst productions of the entire year. Instead of proving she was still that unstoppable superstar, J.Lo's projects became receipts. Evidence that her brand wasn't inspiring anymore, it was exhausting. Instead of showcasing her as a reborn superstar, those projects did the opposite. They exposed her as out of touch. J.Lo looked less like an icon reclaiming her throne and more like someone lost in her own myth, blinded to what fans actually wanted. And while critics shredded her comeback piece by piece, something even darker started bubbling up. The old rumors crept back into the spotlight. Because let's be real, the biggest hit to her career wasn't just a flopped album or weak ticket sales. It was the reminder of something people had whispered for years. Jennifer Lopez was never truly authentic. For decades, folks have said she's more of a manufactured product than a raw talent, and that narrative is haunting her again. See, J.Lo's rise to the top didn't come from grinding in grimy clubs or hustling for mic time like so many other artists. Her leap into music didn't happen until after Hollywood had already crowned her a star. The turning point was 1997, when she played Selena Quintanilla in the legendary biopic. That role changed everything. Suddenly, people saw her not just as an actress, but as someone who could be a singer too. The film gave her the confidence to try music, but here's the kicker. She wasn't a singer. No training, no history of chasing gigs, no dues paid in the music trenches. What she did have, though, was Sean Diddy Combs by her side. He was her partner at the time, and with him came access to the most elite circles in the industry. Diddy didn't just date her, he opened doors that were sealed shut for others. Through him, she connected with Benny Medina, who went on to be her ride-or-die manager for decades. And then came the real game changer, the moment that would turn J.Lo from a Hollywood actress into a chart-topping pop machine. Enter Tommy Mottola, the powerhouse president of Sony Music, and let's not forget, Mariah Carey's ex-husband. The timing was no coincidence. Fresh out of a bitter divorce, Mottola was gunning for revenge, and what better way to sting Mariah than to build up a brand new Latina superstar who could snatch headlines and eat up chart space. Jennifer Lopez walked in at the perfect moment, with Sony's full muscle behind her, an endless promo budget, and industry doors flung wide open. By 1999, J.Lo dropped her debut album On the 6, and yes, it was a hit. But not because the music changed the game or pushed boundaries. The truth? The machine behind her forced it to be a hit. The marketing was relentless. Radio play, magazine spreads, primetime TV, all perfectly orchestrated. But from the start, there was this nagging perception. J.Lo wasn't breaking through on talent alone. She was being packaged into superstardom. Other artists clawed their way up by grinding with raw talent, distinct voices, or innovative style. Jennifer, she was seen as the pretty face with the right connections, molded into a pop star because the industry wanted her to be one. And over the years, that perception only got louder, especially with every scandal that followed. The most notorious came in December 1999, a moment that nearly derailed everything. Jennifer Lopez and Diddy got arrested after a chaotic nightclub shooting in Manhattan that left 3 people injured. The headlines were explosive. At first, all eyes were on Diddy with accusations flying that he fired the gun. But then came the real bombshell, claims that Jennifer herself had smuggled the weapon inside and even handed it over to him. That night didn't just stain her image, it cemented a darker narrative. J.Lo wasn't just a product of marketing. She was someone whose career was shadowed by dangerous drama from the jump. Jennifer Lopez never spent a single day behind bars. She was released immediately after the arrest, and Diddy eventually walked free too. The case faded into the background for decades, until 2024, when Natonya Rubin, one of the shooting victims, reopened the lawsuit nearly 25 years later. That move sent chills through Hollywood because the timing forced people to rethink everything. Right after that scandal, J.Lo's career didn't stall, it skyrocketed. And now the question hanging in the air was brutal. Did Jennifer Lopez climb to superstardom by staying tied to crime and controversy when it suited her? The tabloids pounced, painting her not as the humble Jenny from the Bronx she loved to market, but as a woman who strategically used her relationships and even dangerous connections as stepping stones to power. And that wasn't the only long-standing doubt circling her name. The question that has haunted her career from day one popped back up. Can Jennifer Lopez even sing? Think back when audiences first saw her in the Selena movie, they assumed it was J.Lo.'s voice carrying those iconic songs, but it wasn't. The vocals came from Selena's own original recordings. That should have been the first clue. Over the years, more cracks showed. Live performances where her voice wobbled or straight up cracked, viral clips of her struggling to stay on key, and an obvious reliance on auto-tune so heavy it basically became her trademark sound. And yet, despite the shaky vocals, she was elevated to judge status on shows like American Idol, critiquing singers who in many cases had stronger voices than she ever displayed. The irony was thick, but what came next was worse. Allegations surfaced that some of her most iconic tracks weren't even sung by her. Backup singers and demo vocalists started stepping forward claiming their voices were layered into J.Lo's songs or even replaced hers completely without proper credit. Instead of being remembered as a pure talent, Jennifer Lopez was now seen by many as the face of an illusion, a superstar built on smoke, mirrors, and other people's voices. Take Natasha Ramos, for example. She came forward and revealed that her vocals were used in Jenny from the Block. And once people started digging, it was like a Pandora's box flying open. Suddenly, fragments of other singers' voices were being uncovered across multiple J.Lo hits. Sometimes they were layered under her vocals, other times they flat out replaced her. The internet started dissecting track after track, and what they found was wild. If You Had My Love, fans noticed it sounded eerily similar to Shantae Moore's If I Gave You Love, Waiting for Tonight. Turns out it was originally recorded by a little-known group called Third Party before J.Lo turned it into a smash. Get right? People pointed out it bore a striking resemblance to an unreleased Usher track, and then came I'm Real, a song tangled in one of the messiest industry feuds of all time. See, Mariah Carey had planned to use the Firecracker sample for her single Loverboy, but before she could even release it, J.Lo dropped I'm Real with that exact same sample. The connection? Tommy Mottola, Mariah's ex-husband, who allegedly handed the material straight to Jennifer as a way to spite Mariah after their bitter divorce. That move didn't just ignite one of the biggest feuds in pop, it left a permanent scar. To this day, Mariah refuses to even acknowledge Jennifer Lopez's existence, brushing her off with the now legendary line, "I don't know her." And here's the part that stings. Mariah's jab wasn't just shady, it spoke to an industry truth whispered behind closed doors for years. Jennifer Lopez's entire career looked less like a legacy of original artistry and more like a patchwork quilt stitched together from other people's work. Mariah once dropped a line that cut deeper than most people even realized at the time. When asked about Jennifer, she smirked and said, "If someone else sang your songs for you, of course you'd get to sleep 8 hours a night too." Brutal. But with that one comment, she nailed what critics had been whispering for years. Jennifer Lopez wasn't grinding in the studio like a true vocalist. She was letting others do the heavy lifting, then stepping into the spotlight to soak up the glory. And once the internet evolved into a treasure chest of leaks, old demos, and receipts, that facade started crumbling fast. Fans began digging up side-by-side comparisons. Natasha Ramos's vocals lined up against J.Lo's tracks, exposing uncanny similarities. Others unearthed Third Party's original version of Waiting for Tonight, proving Jennifer didn't create that signature sound at all. What used to be just whispers in industry backrooms became undeniable evidence plastered all over YouTube and fan forums. It wasn't just die-hard fans obsessing over the details anymore. Even casual listeners The ones who'd been singing along to J.Lo hits for years started questioning if they'd been fooled. The conversation shifted from admiration to suspicion, with people wondering how much of her catalog was really hers. But here's the twist. Jennifer's empire wasn't built on vocals alone. What she lacked in undeniable voice, she made up for with a weapon few in the industry wielded better: image. She knew how to sell fantasy, package herself as a brand, and turn her personal life into a headline. While others hustled on talent, J.Lo mastered the art of marketing herself into a movement. Jennifer Lopez leaned on every weapon she had: her beauty, her dancing, her acting chops. She ruled red carpets, slayed in music videos, dominated magazine covers, and for years, it worked. People overlooked the shaky vocals because the package was dazzling. She was the spectacle, and spectacle sells every time. But here's the catch. When a career is built on spectacle, the illusion has to stay flawless. The second it cracks, there's nothing real left to hold on to. And that's exactly what started to unravel in recent years. While the whispers about her voice grew louder, another narrative began to take over. The rumors about her personality, the diva stories exploded, claims of arrogance, entitlement, and straight-up coldness. People who worked with her left disillusioned, saying the Jenny from the Block charm was just an act. The stories were wild. Jennifer Lopez allegedly demanded that nobody look her directly in the eye, that all communication had to go through her assistant, and that backstage she wasn't to be disturbed under any circumstance. On paper, sure, it sounds like typical superstar demands. But with J.Lo, insiders swore it went way beyond that. Her reputation grew darker because it wasn't just about being untouchable, it was about tearing others down. In interviews, she shaded Salma Hayek, reducing her to just a sex symbol while positioning herself as the one with range and substance. She brushed off Cameron Diaz as nothing more than a lucky model who stumbled into Hollywood fame. And when it came to Gwyneth Paltrow, J.Lo didn't hold back, claiming she was more famous for dating Brad Pitt than for her actual acting chops. What might have passed as casual shade for others became a pattern for Jennifer, a trail of arrogance that painted her less as a queen and more as a rival who couldn't stand to share the spotlight. Jennifer Lopez didn't stop at shading Salma, Cameron, or Gwyneth. She even took aim at Madonna's acting and Winona Ryder's career. It became a full-on pattern. J.Lo trying to lift herself up by tearing others down, but the irony? So many of those same digs could have been thrown right back at her. A pretty face, famous more for high-profile romances than raw artistry, a star who benefited from marketing muscle and lucky breaks more than pure talent. In trying to diminish others, she was basically describing herself. And here's the thing about arrogance in Hollywood, it sticks. Crew members remember, publicists remember, collaborators talk. These stories circulate in whispers, bouncing from back rooms to industry mixers, passed around like urban legends, and eventually those whispers pile up until they're impossible to ignore. J.Lo's reputation wasn't just being shaped by her hits, it was being stained by the way people claimed she treated those around her. But nothing shattered her carefully crafted image more than the Bronx narrative. Jenny from the Block wasn't just another single, it was her anthem, her declaration to the world that she was still that same girl from the Bronx, untouched by diamonds, fame, or Hollywood glam. For years, people bought into it. Fans clung to that story, believing she carried her roots with pride. But the Bronx itself, they weren't buying it. Locals started speaking out, neighbors, reporters, even kids who grew up in her old community. They said she never really came back to help, never gave back in ways that mattered. And when she did show up, it wasn't to connect, it was for the cameras, music videos, stage photo ops, PR stunts to reinforce the myth. People remembered her rolling in with luxury cars, surrounded by bodyguards, shoving aside kids who just wanted to say hello. The anthem that once made her relatable suddenly became evidence of just how far removed she really was from the block she claimed to represent. When Jennifer's old school reached out, asking her to help fund a basketball court for the kids, nothing ever came of it. Later, during the pandemic, the school requested scholarships to help struggling students stay enrolled, but again, no response from J.Lo. And that silence spoke volumes, especially when people compared her to Cardi B, another Bronx native who made sure to show love to her community. Cardi consistently donated money, funded programs, and physically showed up for her people. The contrast was brutal and damning. Suddenly, Jennifer Lopez's Bronx pride looked less like authenticity and more like a marketing ploy. She wasn't treating the Bronx like home, she was treating it like a prop in her brand, and folks noticed. Back in 2002, the New York Post even published a piece titled "Jenny Who," dragging her for the false claims of authenticity. Locals openly said they didn't even recognize her as one of their own. Fast forward to recent years, and social media turned the whole thing into a running joke. On TikTok, thousands of parodies mocked her Jenny from the Block persona, pointing out just how disconnected she seemed from the reality of her own story. One viral comment summed it up perfectly. She keeps saying she's still the girl from the Bronx, but ask the Bronx and they'll tell you she's never been back. That line hit hard, and it spread like wildfire because here's the ugly truth. Strip away the vocal talent or lack of it. Peel back the ghost vocals, the borrowed songs, the overhyped, humble narrative, and what's left? Just image. And by 2024, Jennifer Lopez's image wasn't bulletproof anymore. It collapsed like a fragile house of cards. Her long, hyped album, This Is Me, now wasn't just a flop, it was catastrophic. A career moment that was supposed to prove she still had it instead exposed how much she'd already lost. The film tied to This Is Me now didn't just flop, it was branded boring, egocentric, and downright pointless. The documentary, instead of showing Jennifer Lopez as vulnerable and raw, exposed something else entirely, an almost obsessive need to mythologize herself. Viewers even saw moments where people close to her, including Ben Affleck, tried warning her that the project had no future. And still she pushed forward, blinded by the belief that this would be her ultimate legacy moment. That obsession came with a massive price tag. No major studio wanted to bankroll the project, so J.Lo poured nearly $20 million of her own money into it. She was convinced this was the masterpiece that would cement her name in history. But now, that money looks gone forever. And with the failure came a brutal avalanche. The ghost she spent decades trying to bury came roaring back into the spotlight. The plagiarism accusations resurfaced. The backup singers who claimed their voices were stolen spoke louder than ever. The nightclub shooting with Diddy was dragged back into the headlines. The celebrity rivalries, the diva stories, the fake Bronx girl narrative, all of it piled onto her at the exact same time. What she wanted to be her grand comeback turned into something far uglier, a public trial of her entire career. Think about it. For years, Jennifer Lopez managed to keep her empire standing by balancing spectacle and myth. But once the spectacle stopped dazzling, the myth cracked open and people started looking backward. And when they did, they didn't see the rise of a self-made icon. They saw the blueprint of a carefully manufactured illusion, collapsing in plain sight. And now, here we are, Jennifer Lopez standing at a crossroads with the world watching. She wanted her 2024 to 2025 comeback to be her coronation, the proof that she still reigned as the ultimate diva of pop culture. Instead, it became evidence that maybe her fame was always way more fragile than people realized. Which raises the chilling question, can J.Lo reinvent herself one more time? Or are we watching the slow, painful collapse of her legacy in real time? History shows every superstar faces a reckoning. Some stumble and bounce back stronger, reshaping themselves for a new era. But for others, that stumble is permanent. It's the end of the story. And when you look at Jennifer Lopez right now, buried under decades of resurfaced accusations, with her carefully polished image cracked open for everyone to see, it doesn't feel like just another stumble. It feels like this could be the moment the illusion finally shatters for good. What makes Jennifer's downfall so haunting isn't only the failure we're seeing now, it's the way it feels like it was always inevitable. Like the cracks were baked into her story from the very beginning, just waiting for the right moment to split wide open. Because think about it. Her entire rise in music was never truly independent. From day one, she was tethered to the power of others. Diddy, Benny Medina, Tommy Mottola. These were the kingmakers who opened doors, pulled strings, and built the machine around her. Without them, would Jennifer Lopez have ever broken into music? Maybe she still would have been a Hollywood actress. Maybe she would have stuck to films. But that global music career that turned her into a household name, that was manufactured, orchestrated, and designed by others, not born from raw talent. Jennifer Lopez's rise was never the organic grind of someone clawing their way up through open mics, talent shows, or nights spent hustling in tiny clubs. No, her career was a chessboard carefully moved by people with power, grudges, and deep pockets. And when a career is built like that, it carries a certain fragility, because the second the machine slows down, or worse, when the public starts asking real questions, the truth becomes impossible to hide. And the truth is this: Jennifer Lopez has always been sharper at selling an image than delivering pure substance. That doesn't mean she's talentless. She can dance, she can perform, she can absolutely command a stage. But strip away the glitter, the lights, the million-dollar marketing campaigns, what's left? Does she truly have the raw talent to stand alone without the machine propping her up? That's the question that's haunted her for more than 2 decades. And every time another ghost from her past resurfaced, that question got louder. The accusations of borrowing or outright stealing other artists' work only added fuel to the fire. Take Get Right, for example. When the track dropped in 2005, fans thought it was edgy, bold, and fresh. It became one of her defining songs, a smash that people still associate with her. But insiders knew the truth: that beat, that sound, that edge. It wasn't born in Jennifer's hands. Behind the scenes, there were whispers that the song wasn't as original as it seemed. And those whispers started turning into receipts that painted J.Lo's legacy in a whole new light. Get Right raised eyebrows the second it dropped because it sounded eerily familiar. That's when people remembered Usher had already recorded a nearly identical demo years earlier called Ride the Melody. Same structure, same groove, just buried on the shelf. Yet somehow, Jennifer's team discovered it and rebranded it as her own big hit. Coincidence? Industry insiders didn't think so. They whispered that J.Lo had a knack for finding material that mysteriously already existed. And it wasn't just that track. Look back at her debut single, If You Had My Love. To the untrained ear, it was fresh and sultry. But anyone who'd heard Shantae Moore's If I Gave You Love knew the truth. The blueprint was practically identical. Same melody, same vibe, just polished up and repackaged to launch Jennifer Lopez as the new superstar. Even Waiting for Tonight, a song fans still call one of her biggest anthems, wasn't hers from the jump. The original was already recorded and released by a little-known group called Third Party. Jennifer didn't invent that hit. She reintroduced it, with her face plastered on the cover and her machine pushing it worldwide. Over and over, the pattern repeated. J.Lo's career was built less on originality and more on repackaging other people's work into her brand. And if the music wasn't shaky enough, her behavior behind the scenes made things worse. Stories from sets painted a picture that clashed with the Jenny from the Block image. One extra swore that when Jennifer walked into the room during a video shoot, she didn't say hello, didn't acknowledge anyone, like the entire crew was invisible. For someone claiming to be relatable and down to earth, the diva energy was impossible to ignore. She didn't just walk onto sets, she stormed through them. One extra swore Jennifer would march straight to her trailer, assistants scrambling to clear the path like she was royalty. Another woman recalled a photo shoot where J.Lo demanded the air conditioning be shut off because she didn't want her hair to move, even though the crew was trapped under blazing hot lights dripping in sweat. Are these stories exaggerated? Maybe. But in Hollywood, perception is everything, and reputations are built on whispers that eventually snowball into mountains. And then there were her words, the way she talked about her peers, the casual shade thrown at Gwyneth Paltrow, Madonna, Salma Hayek, Cameron Diaz, Winona Ryder. It might have seemed like harmless diva confidence in the moment, but years later, those comments aged like poison. Now, when people revisit them, they don't hear playful honesty, they hear arrogance. They see a woman convinced she was above her peers, even while her own artistry was constantly questioned. And of course, looming over it all was the Bronx narrative, that carefully crafted Jenny from the Block persona that became her anthem. But back in 2002, the New York Post dropped a scathing article titled "Jenny Who?" and it hit like a wrecking ball. Locals from her own neighborhood spoke out, saying she never gave back, never showed up, and never really represented them. To the Bronx, Jennifer Lopez wasn't the hometown hero she claimed to be. She was just another celebrity using her roots as a costume, showing up only when the cameras were rolling. She wasn't Jenny from the Block. She was Jennifer Lopez, Hollywood star, swooping back only when the cameras were rolling. That sting never faded, and it cut even deeper during the pandemic when her old school asked her for scholarships to help students stay enrolled. J.Lo never answered, but you know who did? Cardi B, another Bronx native, younger, louder, and way more connected to the streets. Cardi donated, funded programs, and actually showed up. The contrast couldn't have been harsher. While Jennifer posed for glossy spreads, Cardi gave back and the public saw it. That's why when Jennifer leaned on the Bronx narrative yet again in her 2024 documentary, the whole thing blew up in her face. Instead of inspiring fans, it turned into meme material. TikTok lit up with parodies of J.Lo trying to act humble, with thousands of users mocking the cracks in her carefully crafted story. Because here's the reality: in today's digital world, nothing slips by the public eye. Authenticity only sells if people believe it, and by 2024, nobody believed Jennifer Lopez was the girl from the block anymore. Her narrative had rotted, her image had soured, and her credibility was gone. And maybe that's why her downfall feels so devastating, because strip everything back, the vocals questioned, the borrowed songs exposed, the diva rumors stacked sky high, and what's left? Not raw, unshakable talent, not genuine authenticity. What held up Jennifer Lopez's empire all along was image. And once that image cracked, there was nothing left holding the empire together. And when that image finally collapsed, there was nothing left underneath. The album tanked, the film bombed, the documentary, it became a punchline. $20 million of her own money gone, evaporated into thin air. And in those ashes, every ghost she tried to bury came crawling back. Plagiarism claims, diva rumors, Bronx backlash, borrowed vocals, all screaming louder than ever, reminding the world that maybe, just maybe, Jennifer Lopez was never the legend she sold herself to be. But here's the burning question: does she deserve another shot? Because Hollywood has a funny way of forgiving its fallen idols. We've seen it happen. Britney Spears reclaimed her voice. Robert Downey Jr. rose from scandal to superstardom. Even Ben Affleck himself staged a comeback when everyone thought he was done. Audiences love a redemption arc. But Jennifer's case, it feels different, because this isn't one mistake or one scandal she has to bounce back from. It's decades of suspicion stacked sky high. For over 20 years, whispers followed her about ghost vocals, borrowed songs, shady industry chess moves, diva behavior, arrogance, and disconnection from the very community she claimed to represent. Now, in 2025, those whispers aren't whispers anymore. They're screams echoing across social media, headlines, and late-night jokes, all colliding at once. And maybe that's why this moment feels so final. Like we're not just watching Jennifer Lopez trip up on a bad project, we're watching the unraveling of a carefully crafted illusion. The legend of Jenny from the Block is cracking wide open, and what's spilling out doesn't look like authenticity. It looks like smoke, mirrors, and the end of an era. Picture it: Jennifer Lopez standing on stage for decades, smiling, glowing, convincing the world she was still Jenny from the Block. And for years, the crowd cheered. But now, the curtain's been yanked back. The songs weren't always hers, the voice wasn't always hers, and the Bronx she swore she carried in her heart, turns out it wasn't really hers either. And once that truth hits, you can't unsee it. The illusion doesn't sparkle anymore. It crumbles. So maybe this is it. Maybe this is the slow, quiet death of her legacy. Not with some dramatic explosion, not with one big scandal that took her down, but with something far more chilling: indifference. The world isn't angry. They're not even fighting about her anymore. They just stopped caring. And for a superstar, that's the cruelest fate of all. Not hate, not outrage, but silence. Now, the only question left is, can Jennifer Lopez reinvent herself one more time? Can she rise from the ashes like she's done before? Or has the house of cards finally collapsed piece by piece for good? Because if there's one lesson in this downfall, it's clear. Fame built on image might glitter bright for a moment, but it can't shine forever. So let me leave you with this. When the lights dim and the spectacle fades, who's really left standing? The superstar or the illusion? So here's the million-dollar question. Does Jennifer Lopez deserve another shot at redemption? Can she pull off one last reinvention and prove she's more than smoke and mirrors? Or are we watching the final curtain fall on a career that was never as authentic as it looked from the outside? Because maybe this isn't just about one flop album, a failed movie, or a documentary gone wrong. Maybe this is about decades of whispers catching up, the weight of a myth finally caving in. For years, Jennifer sold the world on a story, the girl from the Bronx who became a global superstar. But now that story looks cracked, and people are asking if it was ever real at all. So what do you think? Is there still a spark left in J.Lo that can reignite her legacy? Or are we witnessing the final act of an illusion unraveling in real time? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I need to hear this one.